Mike Johnson from PWInsiderTV here with former TNA star Sonjay Dutt, who returns at the one-night only TNA X-Division Extravaganza pay-per-view. Now, sir, you're actually one of the busier guys on the independent scene. You go all over the world. So, you know, give us an idea what your usual schedule is like, because you're at the point now where you've got your name,
yep,
but you still got to hustle and get your booking. So,
absolutely.
What's your schedule like, and how do you balance everything?
Pretty much, I try to stay as busy as possible. I left TNA in 09, and you know, it's really didn't skip a beat for me. You know, I still was a full-time schedule, still to this day full-time schedule. I was just in LA for the whole week. I'm here right now. We're in Brooklyn. Thursday I leave for Calgary. So every week is different, but pretty much Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday I try to be not home and making as much money as possible. But yeah, it varies. But like my T-shirt says, you gotta hustle hard.
Now we were talking about this before we started recording, but like, you know, you're a first-generation guy, but your dad was like a real die-hard wrestling fan. So what was that like growing up for you?
I mean, that's how I got into wrestling. As far back as I can remember, that wrestling was always on television. My parents both came to America in about 78, 79, and my dad always tells me that the first thing he fell in love with in this country was professional wrestling. My dad grew up in Europe, and Europe mainly, and he spoke Swedish, German. I mean, he had traveled all over the world due to my grandpa. His father was a diplomat in the Indian government, but he had never come across pro wrestling until he came here.
Now that's interesting because of Adara Singh and all those names like that you always hear about.
He knew of that, but you know, I think the stories kind of tend to really
be exaggerated.
Exaggerate the popularity of
not in wrestling.
Yeah,
not wrestling exaggerations.
The thing was that Adara Singh was huge, and more people in India know Adara Singh from Bollywood.
Right, because he did a lot of movies.
Right. He did a lot of movies. Died recently, but yeah. So once he came here, just fell in love with it. And I remember the Aftermags would come to the house. And we were talking earlier, you know, in DC area, we got Memphis. We had all the Crockett stuff on TV. We had Mid-South, World Class was on TV. So my dad would tape everything, and as I got older, I discovered all these tapes, and it just kind of fell in love with pro wrestling.
And you still have a huge tape collection, right?
Huge tape collection. I'd say I had anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 videotapes still sitting in my parents' unfinished basement. They're just kept there. And we were actually talking about, I started to dub them over to DVD, and I said, this is an impossible task. And I'm married, and I got a kid, and I was like, this is too much time. So I still have them down there, and due to our conversation, I'm going to actually dig out my VCR. Tomorrow I got Sunday off, I got a couple of days off, I'm going to dig out the VCR and put some old tapes in.
Yeah, your wife's going to have heat with me.
yeah, big time.
So, you know, obviously you're going to go back to TNA and work the X-Division pay-per-view.
Yeah.
When you get a booking to go back there, is it kind of like, is it bittersweet in a way because you're not there full-time anymore? Or do you feel like just going home and it's kind of like, you know, going back for the homecoming prom?
It's weird. When I came back last June, right before the Destination X pay-per-view, I was there. I had about a 3-month run, and I did house shows, pay-per-views, and TVs, and I really thought that was, you know,
the full-fledged return.
Right, exactly. And then it just kind of didn't hear anything back from them, so okay. And you know, I try to stay as busy as possible, and then they called me for the X-Division pay-per-view. So and honestly, when they called me and told me about this thing, I really didn't know what it was. I honestly thought it was just another Impact taping. You know, really wasn't explained the whole concept, but there's a lot of new faces there, but still at the same time, there's a lot of old faces there that were there when I was there. So it's kind of, I guess I wouldn't say bittersweet. You know, to me, I love wrestling and I love performing, and no matter what it is, what the context is, I really do I have a passion for it. So to me, it makes no difference.
Now, the first place I saw you was Combat Zone Wrestling.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about breaking into, you know, and training a little bit in the business, and then, you know, being a guy from Virginia and the DC area and breaking out in Philly, and that kind of being like your real first big break on the indie, so to speak.
Right, the Northeast, even though I'm not from the Philly, Jersey area, that was my area, you know, coming up. When I trained in Virginia, and in that area, there was really no work. Work is few and far between, and I just had such a passion and love for this, and I knew. I don't think that I knew where I wanted to go, but I kind of saw that I could do more with this. I was a full-time student in college at the time. I was getting my bachelor's, but really wanted to pursue this a little more, and I saw, at that time JP was real hot, CZW, Frank Goodman was doing all the shows in New York, so there was a hot scene at that time, and I thought, wow, I mean, there's so much work that I can attain. Let me just let me throw myself out there, see what happens, see what sticks, and honestly, everything stuck, because 2003, 2004, but right before I signed with TNA, I mean, it was, for a non-contracted guy, I was doing like 15, 16 indie shows a month. It was pretty crazy.
That was like an interesting time too, because WCW and ECW had gone out of business.
Right.
So there was all this talent out there that suddenly had nowhere to work but the independents.
Right.
So that allowed guys like you to kind of tap into all these veterans and also work in all these different places. Compare now as an older guy that's worked national TV for a couple of years, what's the difference in the landscape of the indies for you now compared to when you were breaking in and hustling to work as many dates as you can and, making sure like, oh, I can't miss a show, because when you're young, you have that mentality of, I can't miss that one show because that could be my break.
Sure.
Now you kind of had your break, you've had your TV exposure, it's a different
It's a completely different mindset. Like you said, but back then the mindset is, I can't miss the show, this could be my opportunity, and that was true, because a lot of those shows that I did do, that did catapult me to TNA and getting a contract and making a living in pro wrestling. Now it's completely different, where I don't feel like I can't miss this one show, but to me I need out of sight, out of mind in pro wrestling. So for me, I just need to be out there, and I need to be in the forefront as much as possible. Whether it be doing this show here in Brooklyn or next week in Calgary, whatever it is, I need to be out there, and I need to let people know that I am Sonjay Dutt, I'm still here, and I can still go.
Do you find it, do you ever have people say to you, hey, what are you up to now since you're not on TV?
You know what, I don't get that. I did get that, like, right after TV. Well, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm here, right? So I'm still wrestling. I think that I'm so busy, and I'm so busy in so many different areas of the country that really doesn't come up, because so many people are aware that I am out there.
I want to ask you, being a guy of Indian descent, you had a chance to go to India a bunch of times for TNA,
yes.
and then obviously most recently last year for Ka King.
Yep.
Given your heritage, what is it like for you when you get to go there? Because you're treated on a totally different level than you are here in the United States or in Canada. So what is it like for you when you get off the plane and you've got all this attention?
The first few times I went, and it was just for media work for TNA, and it was a lot of work, because there was 3 Americans, and I was the only one that could speak the language there. So I kind of had to kind of guide everybody and help everybody out, and I did just a ton of media, and we were getting the word out there in TNA. But this last time for Ka King was just it was a mind-blowing experience, actually getting to perform on television in my home country. The first episode did 19 million viewers, the most watched pro wrestling show in the history of pro wrestling. So, and I was fortunate enough to be on the creative team and lend my cultural knowledge of India to writing a wrestling television show geared for an Indian audience. There was no English aside from the Americans, but it was all in Hindi. It was catered to the Indians, and that really felt amazing. And even though I was a heel and over there, people still do believe that it is real. As much as they hated me for my persona on television, they could recognize that I was one of them, and I think in the back of their minds, they really did connect with me because of that.
What did your dad think of you going back there and getting that huge reaction?
Blew his mind. The very first time that I went was in 05, and we did media work, and I took some footage and I brought it home. These auditoriums with 5,000 people, and it was just madness. It's such a hard thing to go to. At that point, I did that, and then I went to the Impact Zone, where it was like night and day, and I told everybody in the office as much as I could. I said, "We've got to go over there. We have to run shows." It was an untapped market, and we finally tapped it with Ka King, but it didn't take off as much as we thought it would.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was that disappointing for you that there wasn't a second season?
It was a little disappointing, because the first season did so well, and the first season did so well, and we were so confident of the show, and basically, the thing was, we wanted to make it that if you didn't speak Hindi and you watched it, you knew exactly what was going on. It was a simplified version of pro wrestling, and the audience over there loved it. They ate it up. I think there was something with the networks. It was on Colors Television, which is like NBC over there. I don't know how television industry works, but we didn't get picked up for season 2. But it was a real shame because when we left there, they were already telling us what they wanted out of season 2. So some kind of miscommunication happened, and it fell through the cracks.
Well, you grew up an old school wrestling fan, obviously, with your dad. So who's the old school guys that like really jump out at you, like when you want to go back and watch old tapes and you want to kind of fall in love with wrestling again? Because sometimes when you work in it full time, it's easy to fall out of love with it. So when you want to like recharge your batteries and fall in love with the business again, who do you watch?
I love watching any of the old Crockett stuff. Mid '80s, late '80s, any of that Crockett stuff was awesome. And the one guy that I always and he's not even an old school, but maybe he's an old school guy. Was Sabu. I just fell in love with him, and finally when I finally met him, and we tag teamed TNA for quite a while. I'll always put in the old Best of Sabu tapes. I was a big tape trader, and I remember the Best of Sabu. I'm sure you remember as well.
Oh, I've still got them.
Right. So yeah, Best of Sabu Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll pop those in, and I just fall in love with it. He really he just connected to me. It was something that I didn't experience with anybody else, I guess. To an extent, like Flair, and I was a big Savage fan, but he was my man. Savage was my man.
There was something about him the first time you saw him because of the wildness of the characters, and it was there was such a contrast to everybody else on the scene at that point, and just the awe-inspiring, just the crazy. It was like guys did aerial spots and guys did violence, but you never saw it intertwined like that until he did it, especially with the tables.
Yep, and I remember when right before he went to WWE, he left. He had his last show at TNA, and that's what I really thought. He knew how much he meant he meant to me, but I really let him know that night because I was so happy and proud that he was going to get this opportunity to go to WWE and really make it worth it. And that was it didn't last as long as I hoped it would for him, but I was always real happy that he actually did get that experience.
Well, speaking of WWE, obviously that's always the end goal for every single guy. Have you ever had any conversations with them?
Yes, we've had some stuff. There was a talk, the cruiserweight thing going around. I remember Court Bauer had pushed R3 for that juniors thing, and I remember talking to them then, and the cruiserweight show that I guess, I don't know, it's not happening, but yeah, there's been talks, nothing concrete, nothing solid.
Well, you never know what's going to happen in the future.
Absolutely. You guys got to hustle hard, like I said, out of sight, out of mind in pro wrestling, man. You just got to get out there, you got to work, you got to connect with people, let them know that you're there.
Well, speaking of connecting with the people, you're big on social media and online, so why don't you plug that stuff and we'll get on out of here.
Yes, Twitter is @Sonjay Dutterson, and I have a website where I post blogs about my life inside and outside of the ring. It's www.sonjaydutterson.com. I'm at Facebook, Sonjay Dutt. Just find me on there, and I'm real accessible. I try to answer and talk and converse as much as I can.
All right, we'll put links to all those right under this. And sir, any final messages for those who have supported you over the years through TNA and the Indies?
You know what? Just a thank you, and I say it a lot. I really do genuinely want to thank everybody for the support because honestly, I wouldn't be here. I still wouldn't be wrestling for a living and doing what I love if it wasn't for the fans. So thank you.
All right. So until next time here on PWInsiderTV, thank you to Mr. Sonjay Dutt. We'll talk to you down the line.